Detroit is the new movie from the director of The Hurt Locker and Zero Dark 30. Her name is Catherine Bigelow. It stars Finn from Star Wars. It stars the Falcon from the Avengers. It stars Gilly from Game of Thrones. It was okay. Detroit is, well, I thought it was about the riots in Detroit in 1969, 68, something like that. But the film is really about the Algiers motel incident, and it's really a movie more about that than it is the entire city of Detroit and the entire, giant riot that took place. I thought this movie was good, not great. I think in terms of this material and this story, this is the best possible movie you could have made out of it. Obviously, they don't have all the facts, they have most of them, and the movie is incredibly accurate. I found the film very intense, very well made. Overall, though, I didn't think the movie was anything all too special. So first of all, I want to go through all the good things, because there's many, many good things about this movie. I talked about a film earlier this year, directed by a woman, called Wonder Woman, which I thought was a messy piece of shit.
Single white male review alert. Ooh me, my manhood's threatened.
But then we get to Catherine Bigelow, who is one of the best directors working right now, and this movie perfectly demonstrates why she's such a great director. Hurt Locker is a much better movie than this, but she does an amazing job depicting these real-life events in a way that feels unbiased and unflinching and just very raw and real. The way I felt while watching Dunkirk, which is a fantastic movie as well, is how I felt through, I won't say all of this movie, but through certainly a lot of it. The camera work is it's obviously handheld and shaky, and everything's up close, everything's zooming in all the time, but it works for this kind of movie because she shoots it much like she did The Hurt Locker. It's shot like a war movie, and that really does work for this kind of movie. The movie's dark, not just in terms of subject matter, it's dark in terms of the actual event. The movie takes place at night. It's always well lit, it always looks like night, it doesn't look like bad blue lights, but you can also see everything very clearly, so they did that beautifully. The sets and the way they depicted Detroit, it was all excellent. I never felt taken out of it at all, like I was in a set. It was extremely well done from a technical perspective. There were a few zooms I didn't like. They were zooming into people's eyes and nose. I'm like, why? But beside that, I thought most of the cinematography choices and the technical choices were great. And it's a credit to Catherine Bigelow. She's a fantastic director, and she really knows how to build that suspense. Obviously, this is a racially divisive movie depicting a very divisive time in American history. The movie does a great job, and Catherine Bigelow does a great job, being as unbiased as possible. This is not a movie with any sort of dumb agenda it's trying to push about anything. If this movie was made by a dumb conservative director, it would have been this hoopla about how all black people just riot and loot. And if this movie was made by a dumb liberal, it would have been about how all the cops are evil. But Catherine Bigelow is a smart director, and this movie is a smartly made movie. So everyone is kind of shitty, but there's people in there who are also good. The black people riot and destroy property, but at the same time, the white cops overreact most of the time, and they say really horrible shit, and they do really horrible shit. Just like real life. The fact that people have criticized this movie for being biased, or criticized it for not showing enough, or doing this, is completely ridiculous to me, because throughout, I'll say, there's a little bit toward the end, a little bit of emotional manipulation, which we'll get into, but for 95% of this movie, I did not feel that at all. It just felt like this is what happened. The best thing about this movie by far, even better than her direction, is the performances. Everyone in this movie really brings their A game. Hannah Murray from Game of Thrones plays a girl in it, and there's one other girl in it too, I don't know who she is, but they're both incredible. Anthony Mackie's great. There's a guy from Free Fire who was in it, he's one of the cops, as well as the other cop is great. Everyone in this movie is fantastic, but the two breakout performances for me, the two best people in the movie, was the guy who played the main bad cop. He did an amazing job portraying a realistic racist. He's not this evil, mustache-twirling, haha, I love killing black people, but at the same time, he's really just... You could tell he's fucking nuts.
I just wanted to do justice to the character, which was to just try and play him as honestly as possible and depict him as what he is.
And while he is a horrible piece of shit, he does a great job making that character human and feel like you're actually watching someone and not just a cartoon character. And the best performance in the movie is John Boyega, who is really, he plays a security guard in it. And he's not one of the random black people getting harassed by the cops, and he's not one of the cops. He's just this guy in the middle, trying to keep everyone calm, trying to keep these fucking crazy cops at bay, and at the same time trying to keep these crazy black people at bay. Like, I don't want anyone to get hurt, everyone calm down, everyone relax. He does a great job remaining calm and composed, but at the same time you can tell he's nervous as fuck. And whenever John Boyega leaves the movie, there's something missing there. Because he does this great job adding humanity and sense to the whole situation. And I guess that's the point, but whatever. The biggest problem with this movie, and what kept it for me from being something great, is that it's kind of a mess. The movie doesn't know what it really wants to be about. It's about racism at the time. It's in many ways about racism now, but especially at the time. It's also a depiction of a real-life event, and the movie kind of stumbles because instead of being about just one thing, it tries to be about everything. The first 20 minutes of this movie take place over 5 days. Then the next hour and a half take place over like 3 hours. And then the final 20 minutes take place over like 2 years. And you're like, where are we? When is this? Why are we focusing on this thing when we could spend time focusing on this thing? It felt like a really great miniseries that was cut down to 2.5 hours. I think if this movie was like a 6 or 7 episode miniseries and it really had time to flesh out all these different elements, it would have been fantastic. I kept thinking about The People vs. O.J. Simpson, which is a FX show. And that show tackles many of the same themes as this movie, except that show had time to really flesh it out and make everyone interesting and really have a deep conversation about all these racial issues that in many ways was much smarter than this movie. Because this movie, again, does not have time to do any of it. Is this movie about that shooting that happened at the motel? Is it about all of Detroit? Is it about this criminal? Is it about this court case? The last 20 minutes of this movie just becomes like this court procedural. And you're like, wasn't it about this? I thought the movie was wrapping up. It's like, make a movie about the motel, or make a movie about all of Detroit, or make a movie about this court, and have it, like, even. Instead, it was so uneven and so all over the place with its subject matter, and making it a miniseries really would have helped. This movie felt like it was 3 hours long, even though it wasn't 3 hours long, because that pacing was so all over the place. And at the same time, it's too short, because it doesn't have time to flesh out all those different elements. So it manages to be too long and too short at the same time, which is weird. This movie really wants to have an emotional punch at the end, and I don't really think it does. I think John Boyega is incredible, and everything with his character was great. There's this other subplot with these musicians. The Dramatics, I think they're called? The Dramatics. I think that's it. And the events that are depicted in this movie kind of cut their career short. Or at least one of them anyway. But they didn't have enough time to really make me care about it. And it's a shame. You know, I understood who that guy was and I liked him, but they don't go through with that character arc as good as they could have, because the pacing is so all over the place. Where he has his character arc essentially in the last 20 minutes of the movie. He goes from a guy who wants to be a musician, then this event happens over an hour and a half, and then the last 20 minutes he does his character arc. And it's like, you can't do that. They introduce characters in the last 20 minutes of the movie that are supposed to be important, and some of them aren't even important. There's a character who dies in the movie, and his father comes into play in the last 20 minutes of the movie, and he doesn't really do a lot. He's just there for, you know, an emotional connection. But it's like, this guy doesn't have anything to do with the plot, really. And we didn't have to spend time on him, other than the fact that you're trying to emotionally manipulate me. And that's what it felt like. It didn't feel honest. It felt like we have a character, and we want everyone to feel bad about him dying, so we're just going to show his father and his family's reaction, even though his family wasn't even a part of it for the first 2 hours of the movie. All this could have been fixed if the movie was longer, but, it wasn't. So I'm just left with these pieces. These really interesting pieces, but pieces that aren't fleshed out as much as they could be. The movie's also very repetitive. I understand, again, it's a real event, but half of this movie's in that motel, and the strategy of the police officers to intimidate the black people there and the two women, they keep using the same tactic, essentially, and it gets really repetitive and boring. Again, a really smartly made, beautifully acted movie. There's this beautiful opening in the movie. If you've ever seen the Migration series, which is like this series of paintings, I forgot the name of the guy who made them, but they're these beautiful paintings, and this movie explains the backstory, what led up to the Detroit riots, through those paintings. I don't know if it's exactly those paintings, but it's in the style of those paintings for sure. And that was really cool and inventive and interesting. I really liked that a lot. This movie avoids all those cliches. In a bad movie, the main characters would be like 4 rappers. It doesn't have like fucking rap music every 5 minutes.
You feel, baby, my fries. Make me feel happy when you're around. Where were you tonight? I need you around. I feel when you're...
If this subject matter is to be tackled in a movie, I would have preferred it just be in the motel. Just a movie about the motel. But it tries to be about Detroit. The movie's about Detroit. The movie's called Detroit. And it isn't about Detroit. It's about one event in Detroit. Really what you have are great little pieces that comprise a movie. And the movie itself is okay. This should have been a miniseries. I would love to see like an extended cut of this movie, which has to exist. And it's probably 4 hours long. But I would like to see that movie, where the first hour is the first 5 days of the riot, the second hour is the motel incident, and the third hour is the trial. I would have loved to see that movie. Sadly, that's not the movie we got. We got a movie that's kind of about that, but mostly about this, and sometimes it's about this. If you saw the trailer and it looked interesting to you, I would absolutely recommend it. If you want a good movie detailing the horrible crimes of a bunch of racist cops, this is for you. If you want a good history lesson, this is for you. But I don't think the movie did anything exceptional. And I don't think that subject matter of, racial tensions between cops and black people, I think it's been done in other movies much better. Fruitvale Station comes to mind, which is a really good movie. And one of my favorite movies is Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing. And that's a movie where you really care about everybody. And even though it's a little sloppy, it works.
We want the black people on the motherfucking wall of fame now! Particle fucking home, been all fucking day fucking out! Get that jungle music off! We ain't enough! We ain't gonna be about jungle music! We ain't gonna be about Africa! It's about the fucking pictures! It's about turning that shit off and get the fuck out of my place! Ready or ready? Fuck you! And fuck you too!
And I don't think this movie has the style and the rhythm of either of those movies. So, what are you gonna do? Again, I understand it's based on a true story, and you're trying to remain as accurate as possible, which they do. I even looked it up, so you don't have to. This movie is extremely accurate with everything. They had to change some names, obviously, but it's a little thing. And the girls in it were actually more sexually harassed in the actual event than in the movie. I don't know why they cut that down. Maybe that would have detracted from the message of the movie, which is more about racism, less about sexism. But, whatever. What are you gonna do? If I had to give it a rating, like a 7 out of 10, not great, but nowhere near bad or even mediocre. This is a good movie. It's as good of a movie as you could have made. But I'm just sad that it's not better, and I'm sad it's not longer. Because if this was 5 hours, if this was a mini-series, this would really be something that I went, wow, this is incredible.